Hi, welcome to this Open Security Summit session on May 2021. And this session is about creating C# tools using the Owasp O2 platform, which is something I developed quite a while back and still has some pretty cool, spectacular functionality. And I'm going to walk you through some of it. So this is kind of a walkthrough. Again, any questions, feel free to ask them in the chat or mute. And I'm basically going to be doing some live coding here. So I'm going to walk you through, some of the capabilities and some of the functionality that exists here. And we're going to basically be building two tools on this session. You can download it from here. If you go to the O2 platform on GitHub, there's a bunch of projects there. You're going to see there's the releases. If you go to the releases folder section, you can see, and the one I'm actually using, there's a bunch of tools here, but I'm actually using this O2 platform 5.5 RC1. These files used to be hosted on Beantray, but actually literally a couple of days ago, they stopped serving everything. So I'm kind of moving this over here, and I'll probably publish a new build, but this is the one I'm using. So once you download that, you zip into a local folder, just a little gotcha that you need to kind of right click on it in Windows, and then just make a setting here to unblock it. Or else, some of the binaries are going to be not available. So in this case, what you want to be doing is, you open that folder and zip it, and then this executable here called O2 platform 5.5 RC1, which I put a shortcut here. So it's the same thing. So let's open it up, and this is kind of what the O2 looks like, right? So the O2 platform, but fundamentally is a platform to develop tools, right? So you could see there's a bunch of already tools in here, a bunch of capabilities, a bunch of stuff to do. What we're going to do, and I'm going to show you the end result, is we're going to build these three tools that you have here, right? So first of all, we're going to build just a very quick file viewer that allows you to, for example, drop a bunch of, this mode where you can actually, I'll show you, you can drop a folder in here and it will load up all the files, and then you can kind of see the files. So this is a very simple UI, but it's quite a powerful one. And I'll walk you through the creation of that. What is going to be more interesting is to look at this fuzzer that I'm going to build here, which is basically one tool to generate a bunch of fuzz images. So if I click in here, this is basically creating a whole bunch of images, and then I think I know I found the bug there, but this will build those images, and then once you actually, I'll just show you one thing here. So if I just go like that, I can execute it, and there's my images. The reason it didn't found is because actually the raw image was actually not included in the package. So I can fix that in a second. So this actually creates 8,000 images, which we can then load it up in IE and see what happens. And this is the kind of thing that in early versions of IE, this will actually pop the, what's it called, the browser, and basically will be a number of vulnerabilities on it. So you can see it's loading up at reasonable speed, and it was just an interesting way to confirm if the images were actually problematic or not. So let's now take this in turns. So and by the way, if you're looking for certain types of scripts, you can come in here, and there's all sorts of things here. You could see like all sorts of tools, all sorts of stuff that have been implemented. You can also search for things, and then when you find this, you'll see the tool, which a lot of times you can just click on it and it will install or we do something with it. Cool. So this environment here, so if you look at the writing, there's a bunch of different ways you can write scripts. I recommend that you open this one here, the O2 REPL script that we're going to use. A good one is this O2 object model. So this allows you to kind of see the editor. So if you're looking for a method or something or etc., so you can just come in here and it filters, and it kind of allows you to see the method, the extension methods, the definition. So it has a bunch of other stuff on here. So this is quite a good one to have. The other one I like is this search engine, which is very powerful, which allows you to mass index files or search it's a lighter version of the search engine where this actually is going to load up, index every single O2 platform script. And then once it loads, you can search per file or per content. So you can actually write a regex here, and then you can search it, which we'll probably use it throughout this session, so I can keep it there. So what I'm going to show you now is let's build the tool. So I'm just going to load it up. Actually, I can probably just load it up with this, a simple mode, right? And let's start with the quick file viewer. So actually the quick file viewer is available here. So again, what you do is, oops, okay, not happen there, right? So you can find it here. So I'm going to look for the quick file viewer. You can double check, click on it. There it is. So, and one of the things you can do is you can basically drop these H2 files, which basically supposed to be, O2, H2, right? And you can actually see the code in here. So what I'm going to do is I am going to just leave the code here for me to check it, and I'm going to write a new script from scratch. So, and there's a bunch of little things here. So I will walk you through it, and actually I want a new one. So let me just start from here. Cool. Right. So this UI is super powerful, and it's one of those things that it exists on the O2 platform, and I'm yet to see something, as intuitive and as powerful sometimes of this to create mini tools, right? So this is all designed to create mini tools, mini sort of a piece of utilities that you can then package and etc. So the way this works here is that you got this panel here. You can see that panel there. And that panel is basically being fed to this bit of code here. Now, for reference, this code that you see here, I think has a function here, which was show, there you go, right? This function that you see here is actually, it was actually a really cool trick that I found that worked really well with refactoring, which is basically, it's actually, that code is actually being put dynamically here and then executed. So if you look at on the right, if I actually go, for example, return 42, you'll see that the text changed, right? And then I can execute it, and what's being executed is basically this, called dynamic method. I'm actually going to do a setting here called auto execute on compile. And what that means, it means that every time I change the code compiles, it actually executes, which basically just makes it a little bit easier to code and faster, pure REPL, right? You could see compiles execute. So if I change that, changes that, executes it, right? So just for reference, basically that's what it is, right? So what you see here, you basically see this code is just a way to do this simpler. More importantly, you get fed this guy here, which is basically a panel, which is that. Which is why you can see that this variable here is the only one that is not declared. And what I do is I clear it and add a new panel. You're going to understand why in a little bit. And then I have what I call the top panel. And then what I can do with this is I can programmatically manipulate it. So remember that at the moment, every time I compile, it executes. So, and I don't need the right bit. Cool, right? So, so I could, for example, go top panel, and let's say you wanted a button, right? So if I wanted a button, I can come in here and I can say a button, right? And now you've got a button being added, right, to the top panel, right? There you go. Can you see there? A button, and let's say that I wanted, it to fill the whole thing. So now here's my button that I just added there, right? And now maybe you can go, button here. So you basically get a variable called button there, right? Now, let's say that we wanted a text box, right, to the right. So I can go var, let's say, a text box, let's say text. And now this is where it gets interesting, right? Because I can now create the UI dynamically. So I could go, I want to insert something above, right? And what this does is this will basically insert a panel above. So you can see there, actually, I can make it back color red or blue, so you can actually see it. There you go. So you can actually see the new panel that's added. If I want a panel on the right, I can go like this, right? Again, we have a panel bottom. that will basically add it over there, right? Panel doesn't contain insert bottom. It might be below, I think. And if not, I can just go and look at the code complete, insert above, below. There it is, right? So there it is, below, right? And so in this case, let's put it to the right, right? So I got my panel to the right, but instead of this, I want, let's say, a text area, right? So I can go add, and if you, again, you can see there's a bunch of things you can add here, right? You can add a block, you can add all sorts of stuff, 1x, buttons, checkboxes, console out, context menus, data grids, even a development environment, a directive view. This is quite cool, right? And then you see, there you go, right? So you can actually just very quickly add that. And I believe here, if you pass the path of what you want to see, you will see, there you go, right? You see the thing. So very, very quickly, we can add things like this. So in this case, I want, and by the way, these are all extension methods, right? Which are basically extends the panel property. You can actually see here, right? You can see this control, and basically you can kind of see it's actually on Fluent Chart, WinForms extension methods. By the way, will be on that repo in GitHub, right? Called WinForms, O2 platform WinForms. So okay, let's add, instead of a text, which will look like this, right? That's a normal text, but basically, which is just a thing. So actually, I think it's the text. I thought it was that a text box. No, oh yeah, text box is a little one, of course. The text area is the bigger one, right? So now I got basically a text area here, and I thought there was a cool method there. What was that? Add text area with search panel. Yeah, there you go, right? So that actually allows to do something, and then you can actually search a value here, right? So you can see two results, and he highlights the results, right? It actually gives you the results there, right? So it's actually quite a little trick, right? Which is actually quite cool. And then again, that can be a regex search, right? So if you search for S like that, oops, I think that was a regex that failed. There you go. You can see the little trick there. Okay, so let's add a text area, actually a text in this case. So now we got a text. So now, final little example, let's say that I wanted on click to generate an event. So this is where you can now write a Lambda function, and then, depends on a bunch of different options. So I can actually go set, and I think is this one, set text. Yeah, and I haven't coded this in a little while. So some of these methods I don't remember. So hello, oops. And there you go, right? So now you got the button on click, see? So when I click the button, it shows there. I could also, simulate this if I wanted to. So I can go button, click, and he's actually going to click the button for me on execution, right? So there you go. There's a button being clicked as execute. So let's just recap what you have here, right? We basically have a panel which is at the top. We basically clear it, and the reason we add the panel is because when you insert, you actually insert. You basically you have to almost lift the current control, put a splitter, and then add the element to where it depends where you say to put it. If you don't add a new panel, you actually are lifting the base panel, and that means that eventually you're going to be left behind with the other panels that you have. In fact, I can show you that, because if I just go like this, right, what you'll see is with every execution, the other stuff gets left behind, right? So now we, because the problem is the reference that we had for our panel is now deeper and deeper and deeper into the stuff. So what we want to do is we want to close this, right? And we want to just get a new one, because now you cannot get reference to the previous one, right? So let me just go back here. But here's a really cool thing, right? So let's say that the thing crashed, so you want to go back to a script that you have. You can come in here and you go autosave scripts, and you go show autosave scripts. And what this does is this is actually a really cool thing that has every script that I've written today is actually broken by day, right? So you can see open today's files, but if you have multiple days, it will be stored there. I found this really, really useful, like insanely useful. So I can go back to a script I wrote or the version of the script the way it was, an hour ago, 2 hours ago. So it's really, really, really cool, right, to do that. So you can see here, here's the script I've been writing, and there's the last one we created, right? So I can just copy this. Or you could always just drag and drop it here, right? Same thing. So here we go, like we're back in the same place. So now here's a really cool trick, right? So what you can do is, and actually we don't need this, is you can now, and this is where I leave this guy there, right? Because you can now change the one line by the other. And what this is going to do is this is going to create a pop-up window, a new form with this title, right? So what you see here is now that thing that I had there is now a standalone form, and I can now just go and say, call it, say, button enters text, and actually let's actually remove that guy. So we actually click on the button to see the action. So you can see there that that you now got the title, button, enter text. So when I click the button, you get the text there. And then the final big loop is that you can then right click on this and go package script add standalone executable. And what this is actually going to do is exactly what that says. It's going to create a standalone executable. Because I hadn't saved it, it gives you a random name. But if you have saved this, in fact, let's just do that. So if I come in here and save it as, let's say, button shows enters text, right? And now if I do the same thing, package the script, now you're going to see that that's the name of the executable. And this is now a standalone executable that in this case has 600K, that when you click on it, executes that. So it's pretty cool, right? Because this is now a standard .NET. This should now run the first time around on a clean install without the O2 platform. It's installed. It's literally now a standalone executable that you can just share, right? Which is actually pretty cool. So let's do something a bit more interesting, right? So what I want to do here is I'm going to start writing this guy here, the one on the right, and I'll walk you through the multiple steps of this particular application. So we're going to start again with our panel, right? So we can get rid of this, right, of the top panel. Let's bring back our normal panel, and I'll walk you through the multiple elements of the code here, right? So remember that this is sort of interactive, right? So the first thing we want to do here is, you can see there, is I want to basically create a text viewer, right? And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go top panel, right? Add source code editor, right? And then it could also be viewer or editor, depends if you actually want to. Maybe it could be viewer, right? If you don't need to edit it, right? So what you have here, and I'm also going to do the same thing where I auto compile, execute on compile, because it's pretty cool. It just makes it easy, right? So this is now a nice viewer to see the code. If you go editor, you can actually compile and execute and do stuff, right? So you can literally run code in here. And there's a couple of more little things like the search, which is pretty cool, right? And that's one of the kind of editor views. But let's make it viewer, right? So what I got here now is I got my text viewer there. So now what I want to do is I want to add a tree view to the left, right? So I want to say top panel, right? And I go insert left, right? And insert left, and then you can see that this immediately puts that there. But in this case, I want just 200, width, and I'm going to add a tree view, right? Add, tree view. So, and again, there's a couple of other options here. So you can add a tree view with a property viewer, which is actually pretty cool, and then with a filter. Actually, we can add the property grid for now, right? So this means that every time I click on one of these guys, I see the properties that is been assigned to that at the bottom, right? So we can change that in a second once we see the value. So then I want to have a folder called source folder, and then a file filter, right? In here, right? So let me just I'm just going to copy these two now here, but the principle is the same. So you can see that I added a folder to load, which is basically insert above. You actually don't need this now. I think this was a bit maybe older, right? You don't need to actually pass that reference there. Although you can still control a little bit the thing that's there. So you can see I'm adding a 20 pixels high. If I put this to 100, you can see that it's bigger. And this is basically the folder, which is that guy there. And then, you know, the file filter. So that's going to be the file filter I'm going to use below, right? Now, the methods you have here is the coolest thing of what's it called, of extension methods, right? And so of Lambda functions is you can actually define Lambda functions in line here, right? So one of the things that I can go from here is, and I'm going to basically copy these two Lambda functions, is basically, let's for example copy the first one, and then we can do the next one. Is actually I can do them actually manually first, so you can actually see it. So basically, I can then have a mode where I want a flow here, which is, there you go. So I can go folder equals, let's just copy our folder scripts, for example, that one there, right? That's cool. That doesn't have a C# code. Actually, it might do, actually. Depends if I think it's going recursively. So here's the, here's the flow here, right? So what you see here is I have my folder variable, which I need to define. And then, I'm going to clear the text, which is this guy here, right? So I'm going to set the text, sorry, which is that one there, see? So that value has now been set to this. I just clear the tree view before populated. And then you actually, so what this should be doing, I think is because of the extension, see, get text. Again, I knew there was nothing there, right? So let's actually change the filter. And there you go, right? So now, so what it's doing is, let's take this by bits, right? Which is probably easier. So what this code is now going to be doing here is loading it up. Is basically filtering all the files here. And the other thing, actually, by the way, that's really cool is you can use the return value, right, to debug stuff. So if I want to see the functionality here, I can basically just go return files, and you can see that I get the results here, right? And again, you get that little functionality here. A good one to see is, for example, this, right? If you go return panel, you actually get to see the top panel, right? In fact, even the coolest thing, look at this. If I change the tree view or the text, or the source folder, which is a text, if I return it, you can see that this actually is returning this object, which is this object here. So actually, if I change it here, right, it change it over there. So again, if I change the color, right, it changing the color. If I change, the information, so you can see that I have control over, and it's actually a really cool way of seeing all the options available in there, right? Even the anchor, where it is, how everything fits together. So basically, I'm actually seeing that object there. And if you want to see something a bit more interesting, the text viewer, which is actually another controller, again, you can see the information around it, right? And I believe the tree view should give me access to the nodes. So you should, there you go, nodes there, right? So let's actually add some nodes so you can actually see them here. So now you get to see here, nodes collection. There you go, right? So this view here is the files that we actually are seeing over there, right? So you actually are seeing the same contents that you're seeing there, you're seeing here, and actually, and then and this is just a quick viewer, but this is actually showing the property of the tree nodes, which is probably what you also, but here you just see the property of the string. So actually, we don't need a tree view with property grid because there's not a lot of stuff there. All right, so now you can see that I got this method here, but this method at the moment is executed in line, so it's not really that useful. So what we want to do is what I've done there, where we basically now, what's it called? We're going to execute that as part of a Lambda function. So you can see I got my Lambda function here who loads files, right? And yeah, you don't want the function variable folder here. So now I got a function which actually I can use below, right? So this is pretty cool. So I can actually come in here and I can actually go load files, right? And this is going to execute it there, right? So look at that. That's pretty cool, right? So and actually, let's do something with a bit more meat. So we get. I'm gonna go back to the C# files, and I'm gonna go to O2 platform. I'm gonna go to this folder, which is where all the scripts are. Oops. And I am going to use that as my base folder. So you can see there, I'm actually calling that Lambda function as the functionality, right? So now you can see that is now loading all the C# files, right? That existed here, right? And there's a bunch of different options that you have here. If I believe in here, I can actually also control the file name, right? I think one of the options here is actually I think it's the first one. So if I went file name, where's the file name? File name, right? You would only see the file name there, right? See, so that's another option, right? So the first parameter is what you see here. The second parameter is this thing, and I actually believe that I can go sorted here. Though these might need to be called afterwards, or maybe just says to sort. All right, cool. There you go. It works well. So now you can see that I got my tree, my sorted. In fact, you can probably even add that here, so you don't need to add it, because I think that just sets the sorted to true, right? So now, again, there's all my methods that I've called here, right? Which is cool. So now you got a function to load files, right? So now one of the things that we can now do here is I'm loading it from here, but what you probably want is an action, right? To load this based on some behavior. So I'm actually going to create another helper function here called what's it called? Action load from source, which fundamentally just actually is going to load whatever value is on that folder thing there, right? So in this case, for example, if I wanted to trigger this behavior, I could actually call the function directly, but I would actually have to, and you can see there's nothing there, I would actually have to go to the source folder, and I would go set text, and what this is doing is actually what's it called? Oh, cool, missing the bracket there. And now you're seeing the workflow, right? So now what's happening is I'm basically loading up this, and then setting the text, and then loading the source folder, right? But of course, what we really want is a little bit more useful cases. So for example, I want a case where if you now read this, I actually want a workflow that when I drop a file, which is basically going to be on enter, right? So that means that when I press enter in here, it loads it up, right? So you can see that when I press enter on the source folder, it will call load files, which is this one here. So for example, if I execute this, you see nothing is loaded. I come here, press enter, and something happens, right? So I could actually now press enter here, right? And now it's going to show me all the other files that exist, right? So now I got a case when I basically press enter here, it reloads. I actually also want the filter to do the same thing. So now you got, when I press enter on my filter, that value will be changed, because that value is changed automatically. And again, you go load source from folder, which is this one here, which load the files. So what this means, it means that I could come in here, and then I can change the extension that I want to load, and you can see that it will reflect, right? The whatever thing I put here, it will reflect the query again very quickly, which again is a cool thing. Now, the other thing that you want to do here is on the source folder, and this is one of my favorite patterns, is I can say when on the source folder there and on the tree view, right? Or actually, I'm actually doing the same thing in all the three, right? So when I got the, if you look at this code, the source code, the tree view, they're all going to have the same behavior, which is when you drop a folder in there, I'm assuming it's going to be a folder, it's going to call the load files with that thing. So what this means, it means that if I now go and pick a folder here and I drop it there, it loads everything. And you can see I can drop it there, I can drop it here, I could even drop it there. Actually, that didn't work. Oh no, the text viewer, sorry. Those three. Yep, that one there. I know, yeah, because that actually doesn't work here, because initially I actually had add text viewer, which is a little bit simpler. That's the one that now pick it up. You can see, right? So now, if I drop on any of these, it will load them up, right? Depending. In fact, you can see here that it's picking up the autosave files, which are in one of the temp folders. Now, this doesn't really, and actually, let me bring the source code viewer because it's a little better. So this doesn't do a lot. So we're now missing one final piece of the puzzle. And by the way, when you're developing this, it's always nice to just leave that guy again. Saves. My view on this is anything I can do to save a click or a mouse move, is worth it. So now I can just load it up. You can see now the only thing that's missing is you kind of want to make sure that when you click on this, you open it here. And a lot of the ways, like the way I look at this, right, is you want a situation, right, where what's it called, the functionality is kind of sort of very, very followed up. So what's missing from here is is basically this workflow where you say on a tree view after the selection, and this is kind of important because you can have multiple types here. So in this case, after I select a string, which is the value that it's there, basically called, in this case, is gonna basically get a callback with the name, which is actually the name you got from here, and then it's gonna go text viewer open file. So now you get this workflow. So you can see that now this workflow is I basically every time I click on there, I open up a file here. And I've used this before, for example, when there's complex structures and I need to kind of create almost a mini parser, mini viewer for the environment I have in front of me. I've created customized versions of this, which helps a lot, right? And now the final little step from here that we want is literally just to change, instead of again using the panel that is being given for us at the top, we want to use a pop-up one. So now you can see, and okay, look, it still says button intent text, which is not what we want. This is now a util. Actually, I can just reuse this guy here, right? Which is a util quick file viewer. And by the way, this is the width and the height. And by the way, when you get to pop-up levels, it's probably better to just disable the execution on compile, or else you can get lots of pop-ups, right? It can go quite big very fast. So then you want to control a little bit, the execution. So there you go, right? So now you got this very simple utility that we created here that, when I load up the data, shows up the source code. And final little touch, if you go package current strip, actually probably want to save this again. Let's just save this as quick file viewer, right? Where is it saving it? Yep. And then if I package this up, you now get this utility, which again you can drag and drop folders into this, and it will show you all the files in there, in that analysis. And of course, these now could be all sorts of more complex workflows, which is what you'll see that a lot of the O2 tools have actually been developed like this, right? And they have all sorts of insane, really cool functionality. So usually the C# scripts are those kind of bigger classes, and then the H2 scripts are the ones that you got here, right? So you can see that there's all sorts of utilities. Yeah, look at that. That's all utilities, right? So you could see that I was basically creating utilities left, right, and center for all sorts of things that I needed to do, right? And there's some really insane stuff here for Java, for .NET, for all sorts of tools that you want to do and injection stuff that you might want to play around in Windows. So cool. That was the first tool that I wanted to cover. what I want to do next is I want to cover this fuzzing tool, which is a pretty cool thing. So the first thing that we want to do is we want to create a generator of fuzzing image, right? So we want to create, I don't need that, a generator, which is basically this one here. And what this does is going to take an image, and I'm going to walk you through the script individually because I think it's quite important, right? So, and this is a really powerful tool, right? If you need to generate lots of images and workflows. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to pick, for example, a GIF, right? And so there's a little utility here called .local, and what this does is this basically, and you'll see now here, this will resolve the file if the file exists in the current O2 temp script. So you could see that file exists on data file images O2 logo small. If I'm looking for example, the closure icon, right, which is a PNG, this file is going to be here on images, icons, etc. Now, of course, you can put any image here. This is just a nice little utility to find any, and you could also use this to find any C# script or H2 script or whatever it's in here. All right, so now we got an image, right? So now we got a local target, right, that we can now use. So the fuzzing workflow that we want to do is we kind of want to have this situation where we want to process okay, file, we want to process the bytes of this, right? So what I'm going to do here, you can see, so this is where there's also a lot of really cool methods, right, that you can go here. You can see file contents. So you can see there's file contents as byte array, file contents, file contains actually even. So if you was a text file, you go file contents, but in this case, and this is basically bytes. So this file contents as byte array will return a set of bytes, which we can actually again see here. So if you execute that, there's the bytes for the file, right? And again, let's enable that execution on compile so we can see it. So these are the bytes from the file. So what we're going to do is we're going to basically create, so we kind of want to generate a file and we want to fuzz it, right, in this case. So the logic here is that, there's two variables that I have. There's the position of where I want to modify the file, and there's the value that I want to change. Now there was, oops, sorry, this is wrong key in, all right, cool, in Windows. By the way, I'm running this on VMware Fusion, which is actually pretty cool, really good performance. And on OS X, I have OS X underneath. So there's two modes. I kind of run this. One mode is where you can bit flip every single byte, and the other mode is you can kind of choose a bit more randomly the changes you want to do. So in this case, I'm going to say I'm going to change byte number 100, and I'm going to change with value 22. And you kind of see here that I do other things. So in this case, we're actually going to create a clone of the bytes because we're modifying the bytes and the process here. And I'm just going to run it inline so you can see it, right? So I'm going to clone the bytes into what's the problem? Bytes clone bytes. What's the error? I think it's the value here. Yeah, I think this is bytes. Yep. File type does not exist. Okay, cool. And then the file type, yeah. So the file type, I got it from the extension here. Okay, so there you go. So let's just grab the file type at the top. So now, if I actually go in file name, you see that I'm actually going to call fuzz gif 134, and that's basically that. It's this, right? So I can actually even have a clue. So I actually use this to find some vulnerabilities, and this allows me to know that in this particular image, the byte that got modified was the 134. Now you can do a lot of stuff more complicated with this. In fact, at Glasswall, we have some pretty cool object models that we can use, but you'd be amazed how effective this actually fuzzing can be, right? So then what I want to do is, now that I got that, I got my target folder. So in this case, I'm actually going to create a target folder here. So the target folder, again, you get to see it. Generates all bytes. Yeah, that's at the moment, I don't need that. So you've got, my target folder there. And again, you can see here, if I just look at the value, and this is so useful to see it, is actually going to call an O2 temp, blah, 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 badimages.gif, right? Which is actually the extension of this guy here. So that's going to be the location of this case, the bad images, which is, again, is the name that I have here. So now the next step here is to map the full path of the file name, which is what I'm doing here. So now, again, let's just take a look at the full path. So now you can see that the full path is going to be O2 platform, O2 temp, 5 of the 3rd 2001, bad images, and then the fuzz GIF 134, right? So that's the file we're going to create. So this is kind of the little bit of a difference, whether we're doing all the files, and also if I'm forcing regeneration. So the question here is that if you want to redo them again, right, then that's just a little step. So in this case, all we have to do is save as, and you kind of can see that a lot of these extension methods are very clever now, because you actually have a function that knows that clone is actually a byte, and there's an extra function on clone that if basically the bytes class was extended with this method called save as, right? So actually you can actually even see that the same thing with the path. So if I go to full path, and I can go here, and I can go full path file exists, and then I will see that, okay, it's true, but if I change this to 101, the file won't exist, right? And then if I now, again, do this after the save as, now you get the file created true, right? So and if you actually open up, so now a cool little trick is you start a process in this target folder. Then what that means, you will now see, return there. You'll now see that it opens Explorer, and there's our 2 files that we create. So these 2 files have now that little fuzzing element of 34. So what I'm going to do is now replace that with this function. So this function is basically the one that we've been creating. This is just the one that has a couple of little padding to do this, and that is just basically a mode where if you want to generate all bytes, this is literally going to create basically going to create 256 files per bytes of the image, which is something what you want to do, but this might create massive amount of images, which actually in some of the cases is exactly what you want, right? So there's tests that you want to do exactly that, right? So in this case, what I can do is I can come in here. If I put that as my main action here, right, which basically contains the functionality, and then I just need to call this function called generate files, and what that is going to do is going to, and I don't need that anymore yet, and then and what that is going to do is going to basically create this file here, right? So now if I execute this, you see that now I have this folder that contains all the fuzzed images, right? And these fuzzed images, what's interesting is you could see, right? They now, some of them are malformed, right? Some of them, will now cause problems, right? If they are opened up in some readers. So one of the things that was interesting, like I said, like a couple, probably a decade ago, right? IE was actually vulnerable, and the Explorer were vulnerable to some of these things, right? Because some of these would actually be triggering buffer overflows, where now is just a little bit of corruption, or is basically images that are not well formed, right? So some of these early ones are actually not well formed images. See, cannot open this file, right? In fact, I think what's interesting is that, some of these, actually, I haven't tried it. Let me just try this with the Glasswall engine should be able to pick up, right? That it will be able to pick up, right? Some of the bad things that happens with this, and we'll be able to tell you. And some of them will be able to repair, some won't, right? So here, if I actually go into that into that folder, and I pick up a folder that actually, where is it? There it is, right? So I pick up one of these files that cannot be opened, and I process it here, right? The Glasswall engine now is going to try to make sense of it, and if and in some cases is actually, yeah. So this actually, this particular case, it actually means that the file is not even recognized as a GIF because I think it's probably fuzzing the early early components of it, right? It's only when you go a bit further down that it's already a kind of a GIF file. And actually you can see here, right? Like, so see, look, code length exists is available buffer space. So you actually have a file that currently is not well formed, right? Which is exactly what it is. So the file is not correctly formed. So let me just try this one just while we're here, and you can see, right? You can see some of these files, right? They are properly corrupted, right? They properly broken, and this is actually an interesting data set to open on some data viewers, right? Because you might actually have a case that the files are not things. So you can see too many decompressed pixels, right? So this is where the structure of the file is actually broken because we fuzz it a little bit, right? All right. So now, but let's say we actually want to open this up. So now I got this folder with lots of files that are bad. So what I then have is I got this other script that we're going to take a look at next, which is this script that actually, and by now you should be able to start to read this, right? Is this load first image, and what this script is fundamentally, right? And again, notice that I got my execution to on compile. When things pop up, it's better to disable it. So this basically creates a top panel, adds a web browser to it, inserts a little color on the left as a drop target, gives a little button to say, hey, drop here to load all files in browser, then has this sort of fuzzing. And what this is actually doing is actually for every file in the folder, is actually going to create this HTML template, and is actually going to just open the file. And here I was actually playing around with multiple widths because sometimes is the width that sometimes can trigger the buffer overflow, right? And all I'm doing here is basically for every image takes these particular templates and the file, which is going to come from here. You can see this folder files. You will take the number of files. So this will contain the list of all the images. So I'm going to for every image, which is the file name, take all of them, and then this is going to load up. So if I run this in practice, what this is doing is if I go to my first images and I drop it here, you can see is loading them all up, right? And again, like I said, like this in the past, this would have triggered some interesting buffer overflows, right? So this is now using IE, and trying to render every one of these images in IE in sequence. And then of course the idea would be that if any of these crashed, like if you have one of these that actually crashed in the browser, then you know that you could have a little buffer overflow, right? So I think there's a function here called sleep, no? Wait. I can't remember what. Actually, this is a good example of you go in here, right? And you go into that search or to scripts, and then you do a little search to see, if you got any function that that uses this. And the idea here is to make it as when I design these APIs, I try to make it as smooth as possible, right? So yeah, so I think you got the sleep. I think the function is actually on the form. So I probably can actually do top panel dot sleep. There you go, and it's on milliseconds on this case. So actually, the reason I want to do this is I actually in this case I feel that, for example, from a fuzzing point of view, I almost want to pause a little bit here. Okay, now let's do 100. Oh, actually, sorry, I put it in the wrong place. I want to put it here. So I want to almost like a little delay to make sure that the browser has the time to actually try to render it. See, there you go. That's a little bit better, right? It's not going as fast as it goes, and probably even 100 milliseconds. And there's better ways to do this in a way from a fuzzing. I've done cases where you actually run this under a debugger and you're monitoring much closely, right? What's actually going on this, right? So again, you can see I slow it down. So not only you can see better, you can also, you give the browser time to actually render it in case it causes any problems. And this is the kind of test that you want to do, right? As a sort of a functionality, right? Implemented when you do this kind of implementations for this, and you can see it's going through the pixels, and it's, you know, and some of them are more corrupted and less corrupted. And then actually one of the analysis I want to do is, again, what, you know, when you process this, right, at mass scales, you know, what happens. Cool. So that's mainly the thing. One of the little changes I've added here is, and hopefully this again makes sense a bit, is I've added, you know, I've added a log viewer, which again is a cool thing if you want to capture the logs, which looks like this. See, so you actually see a little log viewer, which you can then send messages. And this, I just added 3 buttons for GIFs, PNGs, and icons. And then, you know, I just trigger here. I see generate files, generate files, generate files. And then when I execute it, you know, see, that creates me all the GIFs. If I go there, that creates a set of icons. And again, you know, like some of this is interesting because when I was actually doing this just a while back, right? You know, it actually took, you know, the PNG actually was actually causing a little bit of delays on the machine, right? So it's interesting to see that some of these files might actually be causing a bit of a havoc, right? Already a little bit here, right? But nothing crashed, right? Nothing too problematic. But I found that, for example, the PNGs here took a little while to process the first time around and to be double checked, right? So there you go, right? So that's the kind of flow, right? And now you've got these really cool sets of images, and in this case it's 8,000 images, right? I think it's 8,000 items, and like I said, if you then wanted to really create a good set of data files, so this is like, you know, let's say this is 13 megabytes. So if I now come in here and use generate all bytes, right? So let me just see which one is bigger, so that I, you know, lists list details. So this is 2K. Let me see the icons. What's the icons? How big is an icon? And the icon is, well, they're all 2K. Oh, well, that's not right. So this is 1.2 bytes. This is, okay, this is 1.6 bytes, and I guess the other one's a bit bigger. So let's fuzz the icons and generate them all. So if I go here, generate all items, of course, that, you know, you can now develop a better UI. You can have a little checkbox here. You know, you can have all sorts of parameters at the top. So if I go generate all bytes and I run this and I go create icons, and now this is literally going to create, and you can see the files are being generated right now. This is going to create a nice amount of files here, right? For this, and you actually will see eventually here how many files got created in the end, because I believe I've added this message here. Where is it? Yeah, so I've added a message. Oh, I did. Oh, yeah, there you go. File format log info. So once this finished creating, it will basically you know, map the whole thing. But meanwhile, it should still be creating the log files, right? And actually, and this is an interesting one, right? Like this actually, you know, creating a lot of these files in a file system, it's actually slows everything down, right? So it's an interesting, almost denial of service to the system right here, because I believe is actually the who's actually using all the performance. So yeah, look, see, this is quite interesting, right? It's picked at 100%, and is actually anti-malware executable that is actually trying to process all those files, right? So that's the guy that is actually, because I'm not creating lots and lots of files locally, and again the window explorer here, but it's actually, if I open up the window explorer, that also starts to get a lot of load, right? So if you look at, here's a good example of, even that simple script already puts quite a heavy weight, right, on Windows Explorer and the anti-malware, right? You can actually see that the files are being processed nice and good, right? It's actually not really causing a lot of problems. It's the challenge is that these two guys are actually trying to refresh and to map the whole thing across, right? But you can see the fuzzing, right? Because this is literally creating one file per byte being flipped. So this is 0, 1. So basically you set this of that. So basically this is going to create 250,000 files, right? Because it's going to create a file per byte, 250 files per byte of the thing. But this is exactly what you want to do when you really want to fuzz something, right? And when you get a good sense for the the stability of your platform, if it's if it does to do with files being processed. So cool. So that's what I wanted to cover today. So recapping, this is kind of what you can do with the O2 platform. You can build all these really cool tools. You can basically implement all sorts of really cool solutions. And what and then for me, what I like the most is that ability to create executables, right? That ability to create standalone executables that you can then run and then you can share with your team, and you can also share the H2 scripts, right? So these H2 scripts can be easily shared. Again, if you have an H2 script somewhere on your desktop, you can just drag and drop it into that kind of O2 platform UI, and then that will actually execute that environment, right? So that script, which is quite cool, little utility, which is very powerful. So there you go. I don't think there are any questions. Let me just double check. Chat. Nope, no questions. So I'll stop the recording and I'll see you on the next O2 platform session.